You're listening to This Week in America with Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast, This Week in America. It's called The Story of Freedom, overcoming persecution with perseverance, loss with success, fear with courage, and despair with triumph. The remarkable story of an amazing man, Burt Birdman. As a teen, his epic escape from the brutality of the Nazi invasion, his 3-month walk across Europe to freedom, the book For Want of 40 Pounds, From Persecution to Perseverance. How Far Would You Go for Freedom? By Peter Jennings and Frankie Picasso. Frankie is an international socialpreneur, talk show host, certified life, business, and master coach, trainer, author, artist, activist, a philanthropist in training, longtime animal advocate, and a champion for change. She spent the past 30 years transforming lives and influencing culture. Everything that Frankie is involved in has social impact. She's the founder of the Good Radio Network, host of a number of shows. Her TV channel, the Good Media Network, recently launched. And back with us, old friend Peter Jennings, author, public speaker, singer. He writes books from Fairview, his modern home overlooking Georgian Bay and Mundy's Harbor, Midland, Ontario, Canada. Prior to turning to writing full-time, Peter spent his career in corporate communications. He's been with us on the program to talk about several other books, Shark Assault, An Amazing Story of Survival, and Why Being Happy Matters. He's written several other books, currently researching and writing several more. Co-authors of For Want of 40 Pounds, Frankie Picasso and Peter Jennings, are guests on today's This Week in America.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be back with you. Good to see you, my friend.
And Frankie, it's a pleasure to have you with us for the first time on the program. And this is such a powerful book. Frankie, in the introduction, you called it a family heirloom. For you, that's really true, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it's a book about my father. It's his story, and it took 94 years for that story to come out.
It's amazing because you talk about everybody used to say to you and to your father, you need to write a book. Finally, he decides to write a book. Why do you think that he decided, okay, I want to go back and go through and sort of document my life?
You know, it was very difficult, I think, for him to look back because he's such a future-forward individual. That's how his mind works. But I think that at this stage of life with great-grandchildren coming and, nearing the end of his life, he decided that the story needs to be told because there's no one else to tell it.
And Rick, if I can add to that, having met Bert, he is not a boastful individual. He's not one to sit and say, hey, I did this and I did that. It really took me and Frankie to kind of encourage him to share his stories. And fortunately, he did. And we've got a great book because of it.
Yeah, and you go all the way back to the beginning, and you talk about the number of interviews that you did. And with Bert, you would ask him questions. He wasn't saying, and I did this and I did that, because that's not in his nature. Frankie, let's go back to that childhood, that point in his life when Hitler invades Vienna, where he decides, well, his life changed dramatically at that point. Tell us what happened.
It did, yeah. Well, my grandmother owned a like a store, like a food store, and my grandfather was already interned in a camp, and my father was the younger brother of two, and he was the scrapper. He was kind of the fighter, the one with all the moxie, I guess you would call it. And they had been taken out of their family home. They had been transported to, just like a little dump somewhere. And he really just couldn't stand seeing his mother live in this kind of hovel. And so he said to her, I'm gonna go and save you. I'm gonna save you. And in his mind, England was the place to go. England was the place where he would find somebody to save his family.
We're talking on the program today with Peter Jennings and Frankie Picasso. They're authors of the book For Want of 40 Pounds, From Persecution to Perseverance, How Far Would You Go for Freedom? Book available wherever books are sold. The website is forwantof40pounds.com, and 40 is 40. Go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You can link on directly to get information on the book. And Peter, at this point, Bert is 13 years of age. He decides it's time to create basically his own fate. Talk about that, because that was not a simple process he went through to change his life.
Rick, it was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, we're talking about as Frankie has called her dad, a real scrapper. He had spent not as much time in school as he might have. So we're talking about a young man who does not have great education. He has no money. he gets his buddy Eric and says, "Come on, Eric, we're going to England." And these two guys walk all the way through Austria, all the way through Germany. And by the way, going through Germany, they had to do that mostly at night to avoid detection. They walk all the way through Holland. They get to the coast, and they stow away in the ship and make their way up to England. It was absolutely unbelievable walking through Europe to find safety and to save his family.
Frankie, talk about that journey, because there had to be points in time where he must have thought, is this real? Can we do it? Can we go all the way where we want to go to change the fate of our lives? What was that journey like? Because it was a couple of months, and it had to be a harrowing experience to go through.
Peter asked my dad, he goes, did you ever, where'd this come from? Like, did you ever think he wouldn't do it? And he goes, no. He goes, because I think it's just a young boy, a sense of adventure and dream that, we're going to do this and we can do it. No map, no money, no clothes, no food, nothing. So, he was a little embarrassed to tell us, but he would, take clothes off a clothesline in the middle of the night. He would grab an apple or an orange or whatever he'd find, whether it was in an orchard or at a some sort of a market, and they would run, and that's how they ate and slept and dressed their way through Europe.
and Rick, I asked Bert, I said, did it ever occur to you, the danger you were in? You really didn't know where you were going. Did it ever occur to you weren't going to make it? And he went, no, not really. Never occurred to me. We were gone.
Well, yeah, and talk about getting he hops on board a commercial ship bound for England. Talk about that part of the trip, and then we'll pick up when he comes over to the U.S.
Well, what happened was they arrived in Holland on the coast, and they're standing there, these two guys having walked all the way through Europe, and a sailor comes up and says, "What are you boys doing?" And I said, "We want to get to England." And he said, "Well, you'll have to go over there to the passenger ships." And Bert said, "Well, we don't have any money." And the guy, fortunately, was a really nice guy, said, "Come back at midnight and I'll see what I can do." They did come back at midnight, and this guy got them stowed away in the ship, and they made their way up to England. That simple.
If I can interject, the boys heard somebody speaking German, because they only spoke German.
That's right.
And so he heard the sailor speaking German. He says, "Excuse me, I need to get to England. Is this the boat?" So that's when he said, "Come back at midnight." And he did, and he got them into the hull of the boat. They stowed away until they crossed the English Channel, and came out in England.
Well, and then they make it to North America, and I refer to him as Burt Man. He really wasn't Burt Man, was he, until he got here in North America?
That's right.
He was Berthold Skurmann, and when he made his way to the U.S., he eventually started becoming an executive in the commercial elevator business, and decided at that point that he wanted to anglicize his name. So Berthold Skurmann became Burt Man.
1963.
Yeah.
Changed his life, and when he's here, he suddenly becomes involved in the commercial elevator business, as I think you had mentioned. Talk about that, because he was extremely successful at that, and then went through another down period in his life.
You talk about the elevator business, Frankie. I'll talk about the second part.
Okay. So my dad became involved in the elevator business. It started when he was a younger man in New York, and when he came, big story, traveled all over the world, but comes back to Canada and gets a job through a former mentor, and he worked his way up to becoming president and executive vice president of the company. The company was sold. Schindler bought the company. A.O. Smith bought the company. So there's a number of different owners, but through it all, at one point, we're selling the company, and my dad and his executive vice president and other people in the company said, "We're okay. You know what? No more of this. We're going to buy the company." So he became, I think he was the youngest president at the time in Canada when he became president, but he actually really had no money and had a good friend, I guess, at the Bank of Nova Scotia. We'll give them a plug. And they borrowed $12 million, which is kind of unheard of at the time. And they bought the company. And so that was a success story.
$12 million.
$12 million is a lot of money. Yeah.
Was and is. So that's impressive. And He's very successful at that, and then Peter pick up the story because he thinks he's set for life, but it didn't work out that way.
Well, he was extremely successful. He ended up making lots of money. And Bert ended up with his wife, Dorothy, his third wife. They had a fabulous home in San Diego. It was featured in all the magazines and stuff. And Bert had retired by age 70. And he started investing in commercial real estate. And unfortunately, through a lot of bad luck, the bottom fell out of the business, and Bert was suddenly at age 70 broke. He had to start all over again. I mean, at age 70, most people are trying to figure out how to beat par on the golf course. So what does he do? And we go into lots of detail on this in the book, of course, but he buys a business that he has no knowledge of at all.
I love that.
Yeah.
Why not? I don't know anything about it. Let's give it a shot.
It's screen printing T-shirts, putting logos and stuff on T-shirts. And he buys this little company that's seen better times. He eventually has to put in all new equipment and whatnot. And but he's got no choice. I mean, he has to make money somehow. And this is the incredible entrepreneurial spirit in Burt Birdman. I mean, he did what most of us would not be able to do. Age 82, so 12 years later, he sells the business and retires yet again.
It's a story of courage, inspiration, tenacity, freedom, success. For Want of 40 Pounds, From Persecution to Perseverance, How Far Would You Go for Freedom by Peter Jennings and Frankie Picasso. Our guest on the program, the website is For Want of 40 Pounds, and 40 is 40pounds.com. You'll find the book, of course, at Amazon, the usual places. Link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Frankie, as you went through this process with your dad, and you brought Peter in, it was somewhat reluctant at first and became totally enthralled by your dad, as everybody will be, certainly after they read the book. What did you find out? Did you find out things about your dad that you really didn't know before you did the research for the book?
I did. I found out a few things about, yes, I found out quite a few things about my dad. What I'm not going to tell you about here, but if I might just say, my dad, I was kind of surprised because when he did the foreword, he actually dedicated the book to immigrants, and I think it's a really timely words of wisdom that he gave, because as an immigrant himself, he really understands that when you leave a home because of war or whatever is happening in your country, and you go to a new country and you don't know the language, there's so many new things that you have to do, but you fall in love with that country and you do the very best you can. And so 13 years old, he leaves Vienna, he ends up in Canada, becomes a millionaire, and does the very best he can in this country, and then goes to the US and does exactly the same thing. And so you have to say, what is it about the immigrants that people fear? Because really, they're the ones who built the country.
Well, that jumped out at me as I was reading in the dedication. Your dad says, "I hope my story will inspire you to welcome today's immigrants with an open heart and an open and safe door to the safe shores." And I'm reading that, and here's a perfect example. Someone who's coming from a country where they literally are killing people. All they want is a life that they can live. Hopefully some opportunities, but live a life and not be eradicated, which was happening in many, many parts of the country now. And I was so impressed that with all your dad had been through, his thought is on what he went through in the beginning and how maybe he can help other people and teach a lesson to all of us. Let's open our hearts here a little bit. There would be no Burt Man if these opportunities were not available to him.
Exactly.
And Rick, that is Bert. He is a totally selfless individual. He's a first-class man. He really is.
With all he went through, you said, Peter, that he's so calm, serene, this inability to sort of fly off the handle. Was that an attribute that maybe saved his life and turned his life around, that when he was facing all of these challenges that Frankie was talking about as they were trekking their way on their way to England, that he was able to put things in perspective because he had that personality? It wasn't up and down and flying off the handle. It was sort of a rational, calm approach.
Rick, I think that's exactly right. And we have a number of examples of that part of his personality paying off so well in the book. with personal matters, with business matters, and of course, going right back to that incredible walk through Europe. And he's like that today at age 94. He's just calm and cool, and he went in for surgery on his back a couple of weeks ago. I sent him an email just wishing him well, and he comes back to, hey, thanks, Peter, and great to see you. Come on down and visit us in Mexico. I'm like, this man's 94. He's having back surgery, but it's just calm, cool. Let's move ahead. As Frankie said earlier, let's look ahead. Let's not look back, and everything's going to be fine. Very optimistic individual.
Very optimistic, Rick. Rick, honestly, like he just went for this surgery, and he never once thinks it's not going to work out. He always believes everything's going to be fine. They let him out like an hour after surgery. I'm like, are you kidding me? No. And he's like, yeah, that's how it goes. And he called me on the phone from the car, and FaceTime.
That's just amazing. And Frankie, and I'm mentioning your background and all that you're involved in from a business and personal standpoint. Does a lot of that come from your dad? That just sort of the way that you were brought up, because you're giving back. You're attempting to, whatever you're doing has some some positive social implications. Is that part of your dad living on in you as well?
I think so. And especially, when people always say, well, how do you do the things that you do? And I say, because my dad told me I could. My dad told me I could do anything. You can be anything you want. And I believed him. He's never lied to me, as far as I know. And I believed him. And I think that's the key, is that just having that confidence and belief that you can do something makes you, or enables you to do that thing. And so, yeah, my dad adopted all of the kids. There's 10 kids now in the family, and the 2 Vietnamese boat, children that we talk about in the book. My brothers, JJ, and now his name is Andy. It was Ying. But, just embracing them and bringing more kids and giving out to the world. Yeah, I think that's definitely, I think about social impact all the time.
Peter, I mentioned you were Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that aura of his spills off onto you when you're in his presence. I mean, if I'm with Birdman, I feel better for it.
Well, in fact, I was going to ask that because I mentioned in the beginning you were somewhat reluctant getting involved in this, and you visit him in Mexico, and all of a sudden, this is like the greatest writing assignment I've ever had. I can't wait to do the research and spend some time with Bert here. What impact will Birdman have, has he had on you, and will he have on you? Because you take so much away from, you really dig in your interviews with all the people you talk to, and I'm sure the takeaway is totally positive, maybe life-altering for you in working with Bert.
Absolutely. I'm a changed man from having spent time with Birdman, because he is so positive, he is so optimistic, he is so focused on helping others and just moving ahead, not focusing on what's gone down behind him, but what's coming up in the future. I mean, we're talking about somebody who still reads the Wall Street Journal and is on top of what's going on in business, talks to his grandsons about their entrepreneurial businesses. And you cannot be in his presence and not feel better for it, not walk away a changed individual.
You don't meet an old man when you meet my dad.
No.
Yeah, I get that impression.
And you even put him in your other book, Peter. You even said, hey, I'm going to put you in my other book.
Yeah, well, that's right. I'm writing a book called Pushing the Boundaries. In fact, I've finished it. It's about 30 people I've interviewed from around the world who kind of think outside the box. And after interviewing Bert for 140 pounds, I thought, I'm going to put him into for Pushing the Boundaries. Because he is that amazing.
Get a hold of the editor. I've got one more chapter I've got to put in here. Yeah. And by the way, put it at the front of the book. This is important. Yeah. One review says Bert's survival and success through many hardships is an eye-opener and an invigorating journey. The book is For Want of 40 Pounds, From Persecution to Perseverance, How Far Would You Go for Freedom? By our guests, Peter Jennings and Frankie Picasso. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. Book available Amazon, wherever books are sold. Their website is forwantof40pounds.com. The 40 is the numerical 40 pounds. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. So much fun having you with us and learning the story. Thank you for being with us on the show.
Thank you, Rick.
Rick, thank you. It's so great to be with you once again, and thanks for having us on.
It is our pleasure, and hopefully we can do this again. Once again, the book, For Want of 40 Pounds, From Persecution to Perseverance, How Far Would You Go for Freedom, by Peter Jennings and Frankie Picasso. Information available by linking on to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Take you right to their website. And we're back on today's program right after these messages.